If you're thinking about stepping up to a premium class radio with DMR, the new Radioddity GD168 might just fit the bill. Digital mode radios are a great way for technician class licensees to reach out and interact with hams all around the world. Of course, that applies to other amateur license classes as well. There are three digital voice modes primarily used in ham radio. They are Digital Mobile Radio, or DMR, Yaesu System Fusion, or C4FM, and Digital Smart Technologies for Amateur Radio, or D-Star. Of the three, DMR has the least expensive radios, but is generally agreed to be the hardest to learn. I'll link my DMR intro video on the end card of this video if you're new to DMR and want to learn more before pulling the trigger. The GD168 is Radioddity's newest DMR radio. In fact, as I record this, the radios are still in the pre-order stage. The radio is built by Anytone, so it's the same as the Anytone branded version. Radioddity has an early bird bundle package and introductory price that you might find valuable. As you probably guessed, I got this radio from Radioddity for this review, and I really appreciate it. When it comes to reviews, I might ask a vendor to answer a technical question or two, but they don't get any input into the review or any pre-approval rights. In this video, I'm going to take a look primarily at the radio itself. I'll do a follow-on video on the radio's DMR functions and a couple of other really cool features. To include them all here would just be too long. So, let's start off with some of the main features included in the GD168. First are a couple of DMR-related items. The radio has 500,000 contact database capacity. That means that as I record this, the radio can accept all listed DMR users from around the world. For those new to DMR, that means that when another DMR user calls you or you're talking with someone in a talk group, his or her name and call sign will display on your radio screen. On radios with fewer memory slots than the current DMR user count, you'll have to edit the downloaded file to get the total number of entries to at or below the radio's database capacity limit. You'll still be able to interact with those users you delete, but you won't get their ID info. Speaking of talk groups, the GD168 has room to store 10,000 talk group entries. That's a lot of capacity. For example, I just checked the Brandmeister DMR Network website, and they currently have just under 1,700 talk groups. Also related to DMR is the radio is both Tier 1 and Tier 2 compatible. Here are some more radio-specific features. The GD168 has 4 selectable power settings from low power at about 1/2 watt up to turbo power at the rated 5 watts in the 2-meter band and a bit less on 70 centimeters. I've got a power output clip coming up. The package also comes with a couple of what I call twofers. First, it comes with 2 antennas. Both are dual band, but one is the 15-inch long 771 style antenna, and the other is a shorter rubber ducky style. The second twofer is that the radio comes with 2 batteries. One is an 1800 milliamp hour battery, and the other is a 2600 milliamp hour battery. These allow you to have a spare battery with you, or you can just choose the one that best matches how you plan to use the radio that day or perhaps weekend. The last twofer is you can charge the radio in one of 2 ways. You can use the USB-C charging cable from the wall charger or car USB port directly into the USB-C connection on the radio, or you can connect the USB-C charge cable to an included charge cradle if you prefer a desktop charging station. Now, speaking of the USB-C connection, you can also program the radio by connecting a data-capable USB-C cable between your radio and your computer. You don't need to worry about a programming cable with some of the issues that go along with them. If you're finding this information helpful, please be sure to subscribe to the channel and click the thumbs up button below the video. By clicking the bell icon, you'll be informed when we post new videos. There's also a join button where you can learn more about becoming a channel member and a thanks button to make a one-time donation that helps support the Gadget Talk channel. Now, back to the review. There are two more things I want to call out. First, the radio is APRS capable for those of you who use APRS. However, since the radio doesn't have a GPS receiver, outgoing APRS messages come from a pre-populated list. Ongoing beaconing as you move about is not supported. Next is the radio satellite prediction function. If you're into satellite communications, you'll likely really appreciate this feature. When you program the proper date and time, download the current satellite information file, and tell the radio where it is, remember there's no GPS, the radio will display a list of satellites and tracking display. The list will show the satellite's expected appearance time, azimuth, frequencies, and so on. Okay, so let's take a look at what you'll get in the box. So here's the box the GD168 comes in. It's not very big, but there's a lot of stuff packed in here, so let's take a look. First is the owner's manual, and if you've got any of the other Anytone-based radios, this owner's manual is going to be very similar. It's really pretty good. It has the drawings of the various items, the various controls, how to do the various things. But the thing is with this is that this is about the radio. It's not about DMR. So you're going to have to understand DMR, and we'll talk about that more later. But the support by the user's manual in terms of how to use a radio is really pretty good. This is available online before the radio shows up. So if you want to do some study, you can download it and access it before your radio arrives. Now, the other thing that's kind of cool about this is that there are a number of twofers, and the first twofer we're going to talk about is it comes with two antennas. The first is this 15 or 15.5-inch antenna that's becoming pretty standard coming in radios, whether they're intermediate price like this one or more inexpensive, but it's a dual band antenna, and you could expect a little bit better range in a longer antenna. The downside, of course, is that these rascals catch on things. Now, on the other hand, there's a smaller rubber ducky antenna. It's got a little bit of flexibility to it, but as you can see, it's only about a third the size. So this is about a 5-inch antenna. But again, it's a dual band antenna. It's got the socket side or female side here in this SMA connector, and it would be great when you're using DMR to a hotspot in your shack or when range isn't the primary requirement. The other twofer is it comes with two batteries, and that's pretty handy, and these are not the same. This one is a little bit smaller here. It's a 1800 milliamp hour, 13.3 watt hours, and you can see it's fairly narrow, and so it keeps the radio nice and thin when it's on your belt or in your hand. This radio, on the other hand, is a 2600 milliamp hour battery, again 7.4 volts. It's advertised as 19.2 watt hours, and so this one is a little thicker. So if I hold them up side by side here, so you can see that the higher capacity battery is thicker than the lower capacity battery. But either one go on the radio and keep the radio in a fairly small size. So that's twofer number 2. And here's twofer number 3. And there are two ways to charge the radio. You can use this USB-C with a C here and an A here going into this little wall wart or wall charger that comes with the kit and go directly into the radio. So that's charge method number 1, or you can plug this into the cable and then plug the cable into this charging cradle here, and then that's charging method number 2. There's a little LED right here that'll give you an indicator of what the charge function is, red if it's charging, green if it's charged, off like it is now when there's nothing happening. So there are 3 twofers involved in this radio, which makes it a very nice deal. And then the last thing we'll talk about in terms of accessories is the belt clip. The belt clip fits into the radio, not into the batteries that you'll see here in just a minute. And so the screws here are with the belt clip, and that's why I keep it in the little plastic bag so I don't lose those tiny little screws before I get it mounted on the radio. So those are the things that you're going to get with your Radiolity GD168. So now let's do a power off tour of the radio and look at some of the buttons and so forth that you're going to have as part of this kit. On the front, you can see it's got a fairly large screen. It's kind of an oblong thing. And oh, look at here. We've got a little plastic screen protector that we can pull off. There we are. We've got the menu and the exit key up and down. We've got the numbers 1 through 0 plus the usual star, pound keys. In this case, instead of having menu items listed here, since we'll see when we do our power on tour, the menus are set up differently here. These are set with the letters like a telephone might be when you're using a text on one of those older cell phones. And so we've got, A, B, C, D, E, F, and so forth, which means we're going to be able to enter letters into the appropriate variables when we do various programming tasks. We've got the speaker here, and we've got a little hole right there for the microphone. As we rotate the radio here, we've got the push to talk, side key 1, side key 2. Here we have the smaller of the 2 batteries mounted. You can see here's where the belt clip mounts, so it's on the radio itself. On the bottom, we have the little spring-loaded clip that holds the battery in place. And then on this side, we have the cover for the K1 connector, and our USB-C port are all 3 under there. So speaker, microphone, and USB-C. And then we'll use these 2, of course, with the speaker mic. So they're under this little cover right here. Now on the top of the radio, we have a little LED right here, and that LED will give you the radio status, green for receiving, red for transmitting. It's got an on-off and volume here. And then this little knob will allow you to move through menu choices and channels using the knob instead of the up and down or keying the channels indirectly. And then the SMA connector for the antenna, which is a spiked connector, the male connector on this side to mate with the female connector there on the antennas. So you can see here, this is pretty compact. By comparison, here's the other Radiolity DMR radio that's available. This one is the AT10. It's a single band DMR radio, but it's very similar in size to the AT878 from Anytone. And so you can see it's noticeably smaller and more compact. So that's a quick overview of the radio itself. Now let's do a quick power on tour of the GD168. We're going to turn it on here. It says it's booting. Gives the Radiolity logo. And then it turns on. So that was about 15 seconds. And so it's a pretty sophisticated computer in there. And so it doesn't come on immediately. So you can see here I have it set up with the VFO mode in both register A and register B. We've got different frequencies in there. I have not even set up the time and date in this. You can see the date and time here is from a couple of months ago. It's got the RSSI indicator across the back and so forth. On my side keys, I can do a short press and I can change it to analog. It goes to zone 1 and back to VFO-A. And then on the long press on that, didn't do anything that I could see. And then I can see when I press this lower one, I got a little signal there on that RSSI, which means this is currently set up as a sub PTT, which I normally don't like. So I'll go in and make those changes in the software. A long press on the menu will get you into a DTMF. It asked me there to press the keys I wanted to dial. The up and down will move with the step. The exit moves me into my various books here for contacts. So let's just look at the menus themselves. So the first menu is book. We can then We just looked at that. We can go down to zone. This allows us to set up as many zones as we want to put our channels in that make sense to us, so we don't end up having to search through, thousands of channels to find what we want. We can go into our scan menu. Scan allows us to turn it off and on, the scan list, and so forth. We can go into settings. So we can set our radio. Those settings are voice, display, key, and other. We can go into channel set, which is handy because it allows us to program a channel within a submenu, so we're not bouncing all over. So if we open up here, we can see if we want a new channel, delete, what kind of channel, the time code, and all those kinds of things that are necessary for either an analog or for a DMR channel. So there's a lot of things that we can set there in the channel set, and then we can go into device info. So we'll back out of this. This allows us to record. We can turn record on or off, and that's handy if you like to record your conversations, or for example, if you're using this for satellites, you can record the satellite stuff to help you keep track of when those various things occurred. Let me go back up to settings here. We're going to go down to device info. I didn't show you that. So it's the radio's ID. I'm going to want to put that in. It's just 8 numbers right now. I'm going to want to put my DMR ID in there, the radio name, and so forth. And again, I find it's easier to do in the customer programming software. But again, as you can see, we can do it here. We can go into our satellite mode. We can find the location. We can pick satellites. We can, fix beacon and go these various things. We select those. We see that these are all added in. Now that becomes part of the interesting part of this little radio in terms of its satellite. It does get kind of complex, and it's not just totally intuitive. At least it isn't for me so far. You can go in and predict satellites, but that prediction isn't really going to be all that valuable until you download some information into the radio of the current satellite information. And then you tell it where it is, and then you have to, of course, give it the date and time and so forth. And then it can predict where satellites are going to be and give you a display. So that's really pretty cool. Here's the digital monitoring. It does APRS. The APRS is limited to those tasks you can do without GPS, since this is not a GPS-enabled receiver. So you can do analog or digital APRS. You can get the infos, intervals, and all that kind of stuff. But the things that you're sending are going to come from a list, not going to be an ongoing beacon where the GPS tells the radio where it is and then the APRS programming broadcasts that. The GPS doesn't exist here on this. And so it's APRS enabled, but it's doing something just a little bit different. And then now we're back at the top. If you've used Anytone radios before, this menu is going to be very familiar to you, and there's just a couple of things that are a little unusual. So that's the power on tour of the GD168. Earlier, I referred to power output. Let's take a look at my power output tests. And so I'm transmitting into my MFJ 874. I've got the power range set to the 20 watt, which is the second arc from the bottom, and I've got it set to forward, which is the power output setting. So we'll be reading the output on the second arc from the bottom, and we're in the 70 centimeters. So here we go, 70 centimeters. It looks to be about 3.6 watts on turbo in 70 centimeters. Now let's go down to the 2 meter band and see what we get there. So here we are in 2 meters. And right at 5 watts. So 5 watts on turbo and 2 meters, and about 3.5 on 70 centimeters. In terms of signal purity, this little radio didn't disappoint. Let's take a look. Okay, I've got the GD168 hooked up to my Tiny SA. I've got it set up to measure harmonic, and then the Tiny SA puts the various vertical segments in terms of the harmonics there on the display. And so we're at the low end of the 2 meter band. So let's press to talk and see what we get here. So I've got 40 decibels of attenuation. This is reading 6.97 dB here at point number 1, and there's nothing that comes across as measuring above the noise level. So this is a very clean signal, which is good news. But these higher priced radios generally can be expected to have a clean signal, unlike many of the budget class radios. When using a DMR radio, a customer programming software app is necessary to make full use of the functionalities in your radio. Here's a quick peek at the GD168's CPS. As with most of these, we've got the drop-down menus. You've got File up here, the model information. Model information here will give you several choices. I've got this as it's set. It's the commercial US mode, which is basically unlocked with these frequencies. But if you prefer to work in the amateur bands, for example, you can select that. And it gives you the receive capability, but then it'll keep you safe in terms of broadcasting only in the amateur bands. Here in the set, you want to set the COM like you always do. So right now I have the radio connected to my computer through a USB-C cable and that USB-C connector on the side of the radio. We can do the various programming, we can read and write to, we can do a variety of tools, view and help about and so forth. Over here we've got these things, and so we can go into channels, and so we've got a couple of channels logged into the radio as it comes. Here we've got like 250 zones that we can set up. We can set up our scan lists, we can set up roaming channels, that is, we can put in groups of channels for where we are, and so roam channel 1 and so forth. Here are the zones that we can set up for the various roaming areas. So it may be, you know, your hometown, somebody else's hometown, where you travel for business and so forth, just to help manage these, 4,000 channels that you can use. We can set up our FM. So we go down to device information and we see what we've got here. We've got the optional settings, and this one you may want to engage in before you set up your DMR, because this one will allow you to set up a lot of the variables in your menu. So each of these are tabs, and there's just a whole bunch of things that you can set, and in many cases it's easier to do that via the CPS. So get out of this. There's a setting here for GPS roaming. There is no GPS in this, and so I'm not sure how that would apply. We've got local information, and so you can set up an embedded message with the information that is available there. And then here are the digital and analog channel setting, and that's the part we're going to avoid here. Now up here in the tools, there's an important component, and that's the import. And it gives you this dialog, and here is where you're going to import the contact list. It's going to import talk groups and all that kind of stuff. Again, we'll go through that in the upcoming video, but this is where you find it. Now, the other thing I want to point out here on this is that there are some instructions here in the bottom part of the display, and these will help guide you as you work through programming. Again, DMR programming can be a real pain if you're new to that, and this will give you a little bit of help in terms of what is displayed. The various things change as you see depending upon the menu item that you have selected. Let's wrap this up with a couple of closing comments. First, the GD168's form factor and build quality are great. Being a little smaller than the UV878 series of radios makes it easy to hold and to use. Its build quality seems very robust, and I think it would stand up to some fairly heavy use. It doesn't claim any intrusion or ingress protection score, so I wouldn't use it in the rain. Second, the feature set and the huge number of menu settings allows you to customize the radio to your specific needs. Digital and analog channels usage and a huge number of channel zones you can use to categorize channels makes the large number of channels easier to manage. Look for a couple of follow-on videos for a deeper dive into this nice little radio. Join me over here for my intro video on DMR. Again, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to click the notification bell. Thanks for watching, and 73.